Hello there. Welcome to episode 11 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalists.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and questions we're working on today. I'm Michael Livingston, professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
And I'm Kelly DeVries, professor of history at Loyola University of Maryland.
We had a great question and answer episode last time. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Interesting that the two question and answer sessions, the first one was all really specific questions. The second was all these general questions. It's like, oh, geez, okay. So number 15, I have no idea what we're going to do on that.
Yeah.
Really going to be, but a lot of people seem to be listening. They seem to be liking stuff. This is good.
That's good. Yeah, bring it on.
It does mean we have to be right. Oh, we are. I'm sorry. It means we have
to at least sound like we're right. I mean, that's the important thing.
Definitely right. But most important, what are you drinking?
What am I drinking? So if you listened to our Q&A last time, you know that we had a couple questions in which the Battle of Shrewsbury came up. And that's what we're doing today. We're doing the Battle of Shrewsbury, which is awesome. One of those questions that had come into us was actually about Owen Glendower's role at the Battle of Shrewsbury. And spoiler alert, he wasn't there. He was missing from the Battle of Shrewsbury. We'll talk about why that is, all that kind of stuff. But even just thinking about Owen Glendower made me think about Wales. And I love Wales. And I particularly love, there's a distillery in southern Wales called Penderyn. And Penderyn has a really great whiskey. It's awesome. They also have, or at least had, when I visited there, the best gin I've ever had anywhere at any time. So I'm having the Brecon Botanicals gin from Penderyn Whiskey, spot a tonic. It's awesome. What are you having?
Well done. Well, Shrewsbury's known before the battle. It was known as a big monastery, which, of course, when I was a grad student, was made famous by Ellis Peters, probably one of the great medieval whodunit. Really starts that kind of genre going. Not particularly the greatest, but every time a book would come out, we'd get word through graduate school because we were all medieval all the time. So even in our rest, we had to read medieval stuff.
Nice.
That was just how we were. And so I kept remembering, Father Cadfael, Ellis Peters, monk detective, ex-crusader, all sorts of things. And although I couldn't figure that one out because the English really weren't in the First Crusade. But anyway,
details.
No. But he has a herb garden, and I assume as it's a monastery, they made some good ale. So I'll have some good ale. But let's face it, watered down ale from the Middle Ages is not going to make it tonight. So I'm going to have a couple of gin chasers. So
may I recommend the Penderyn Whiskey's Brecon Botanical
gin? Sold.
Not a sponsor, by the way, though if they want to be.
Not yet.
I'd be happy.
Any booze companies want to be our sponsor? We're ready to taste and test.
Bring it on. Bring it on. I've tried to get somebody to bring me up because I brought a bottle home of this gin. It was so bloody good, and I went through it. And I don't have one now, and nobody's brought me one. It's very sad.
That is sad.
It is good.
That is sad.
But yeah, we're doing Battle of Shrewsbury today, so it's a cool battle. It's very fun. Fun, quote unquote, right, as battles go. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff. Just everything.
Yep. Well, I got a question for you. What do we do with the elephant in the room? And by elephant, I mean the Prince of Wales, and by the room, I mean the battlefield. So what do we do? Do we tell them right at the beginning about the Prince of Wales?
About what happens?
Yeah, what happens? This is like the big moment.
Well, we talked about it last week. If people listen to our Q&A, we did talk about this.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a big deal.
Especially for Henry.
For young Prince Hal, the future Henry V of Band and Brothers, once born of the breach, my friends. That guy, when he's 16, is on the battlefield of Battle of Shrewsbury, and he takes a horrific wound, absolutely horrific wound, and we have the doctor's report of how that is repaired, and we'll definitely want to get into that because it's pretty wicked.
But while he's wounded, and I can't imagine that he would have taken the arrow out of his face. Certainly, we know the arrowhead's still there, whether he would have broken it or whatever. He turns and fights with that, leads the charge.
Yeah, supposedly. He keeps kind of going. They want to take him off the field, and he refuses to go, and instead makes the command that turns the course of the battle. How much of that's Lancastrian propaganda or not? I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm the romantic. I believe that he had this 2 foot long arrow sticking out of his face when he yells at his troops to warm up and
cool
turn
the battle for sure.
It's
interesting how that gets sort of picked up or not. So for instance, Shakespeare in King Henry IV Part 1, that culminates with the Battle of Shrewsbury, and that whole play is Prince Hal screwing around with Falstaff and all that, and then we get to Shrewsbury. And there's this wonderful when the curtain rises on scene 4. So scene 3, it's like we're gonna have a battle, and curtain goes down. And rises on scene 4, like we're already in the middle of the fight, and Hal comes on stage with his dad, the king, and I think it's Lord John of Lancaster and the Earl of Westmoreland are telling him, hey, Harry, Prince Hal, you should get off. You look like you're hurt. And they don't.
Shakespeare's understatement.
You should go.
You got an arrow sticking out of your face there, kid.
You should
Come
go.
on.
Prince says, the prince says, lead me, my lord. I do not need your help, and God forbid a shallow scratch should drive the Prince of Wales from such a field as this, where stained nobility lies trodden on, and rebels' arms triumph in massacres. Like that's all you get.
An arrow that's stuck in his face, all the way back, embedded in the back of his skull.
Yes, an arrow 6 inches deep.
It's but a scratch. Yeah, Monty Python and Born at that moment.
Oh my God, it's just amazing. He's like, and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting things. This battle probably not as important for outside of England. Certainly not as important, except it does give a lot of leadership potential to Henry. Obviously, it foreshadows what's going to happen when he becomes king, when his father dies. But then also, this wonderful document we have in our reader. I mean, plug for my medieval warfare reader, University of Toronto Press, is that wonderful depiction of how they're going to get the various parts of Hotspur's body to the different parts of the kingdom, because he gets quartered, and they're going to hang different parts of the kingdom. One of is in York, isn't it? I mean, it's so they got a long way to go, and we have the recipe of how to keep these body parts preserved. It's just amazing.
It's one of these cool documents that this stuff happened, but we have, it's an expense account. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's why this survives. Is somebody's like, I got to keep track of how much money I spent quartering the body of Hotspur and then shipping the pieces FedEx to the rest of the country. And so it's in the exchequer rolls, and it's so on Twitter. Oh man, who was it? Hopefully they're listening. Somebody on Twitter, it was a colleague, and it's just falling out of my head. It's been a long day.
You're getting older.
I'm getting older. Was actually collecting accounts of quartering. And I said, well, did you know about this one? I said, well, no, I didn't know about that one. I said, yeah, no, it's and then the amounts are different. And I said, actually, you could probably do something talking about economics because we have the inflation of what it cost at this point versus this point to quarter somebody and ship their body around, pieces of the body around. I don't know if they took up my idea or not, but I thought that was brilliant right there. That's what
Yeah,
I
I
thought.
don't know. I mean, it is a brilliant. It's a brilliant thing, and you're right. It's the expense account. It's like,
Yeah,
no, this is not free shipping.
yeah, it's not free shipping. No, this was not Amazon Prime. They had to they had to do this the other way. It's from William Bannister is the guy's name, a sheriff who was put in charge of this. Yeah, pages 327 to 329. Total expense £13, 15 shillings. That's what it ultimately cost to
Wow.
do this, to quarter him, preserve the pieces, and ship them around to get all around. It's good times. Good times.
Yeah. Well, we've already let out the spoiler that Hotspur dies. He loses this battle.
Yeah.
Henry Percy called Hotspur. I still remember one of the students saying, "What is a Hotspur?" And okay, I don't know, a spur that is in hot weather. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I should have probably said there is a beer in England that's Hotspur beer, and it has a picture of an English longbowman on it. I'm thinking, well, one, he doesn't have spurs, and two, I don't think Henry Percy would have ever had a longbow in his hands at all.
Oh, well, not in his arms, no. He's got the Cheshire longbowman with him in the battle, of course, which is really key.
Well, let's go back to stage. So, in fact, here's a question for you. It probably should be asked on a Q&A. Rate the Richards. Rate King Richards in England, because this one you got to think starts with Richard II.
Rate the Richards.
Yeah, so Richard I, Richard II, Richard III.
What am I rating? Like how well they can dance? Is this Dancer in the Stars? Are we?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, certain moments Sarah Palin's going to come out in a costume. I'm not sure what
we're my favorite of the Richards is Richard II. Like, no question.
Yeah,
no question. Yeah. I mean, Richard II. I like Richard II.
Crappy king though.
Yes and no. I mean, come on. This is the guy that's like helping support Chaucer, my boy.
Oh well, that's true. That's
come on.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what constitutes a bad king or a good king? In large measure, so it depends on what you're trying to calculate, right? Is this person a good military leader? Yeah. That might be different from a good cultural one or a good economic one. So any of these kind of like the best of or whatever is always like, on basis of what? But Richard II, Richard II is deposed by Henry, man becomes Henry IV. And that it really is
1399.
There really is the starting point of all this. That really is the starting point of all this because and it's not really that important to the battle to understand kind of like why that happened. It's enough to understand that it happened, that Richard gets deposed. Richard is probably locked up and starved to death.
Yeah,
is probably what happens.
Pontefract Castle,
probably Pontefract Castle. Yeah, you don't want to have actually murdered the king, but if you lock him up and don't feed him, God kills him, right? I mean,
true.
That's the way that works. Because
for deposed kings, this is probably the nicest execution. Let's face it.
Starving to death?
At least, based on the execution of deposed kings.
Yeah.
I guess, Edward II's got that tradition that is particularly good. But Richard II, yeah. I mean, it is kind of curious because I wonder about how they got to threes in Richard. Because Richard Lionheart, to me, is tremendously overrated. We're going to see
that every episode, aren't you, Kelly?
Yeah, I am. Until we actually get to Acre, and then I can say, see, I told you. Oh, that Jerusalem up the road, that goal, it doesn't make it. And then Richard III, let's face it. I mean, he dies in a parking lot. That
it wasn't a parking lot then.
Oh, it wasn't.
No,
then.
that's
no.
That's different. But we're gonna have to do that.
Yes,
actually,
there won't be a Richard IV. I don't see a Richard. I don't see John II in England either. It's kind of like
somebody's got to try it though, just to fix it.
Just to fix John.
Yeah,
there's no fixing John.
Well, no, I mean, not to fix
that.
To
John
fix the
makes
name,
Richard
not the
look
guy.
Good. Okay. Fair.
You know what I mean? Like to try, maybe we'll get it. Like the sequel. Maybe it'll be better. And if it's not, then you're like,
John's
no, we're
hey,
done with
it's
John.
a low bar. Yeah, it's like remaking the Green Lantern movie. Maybe the second one will be better.
And Ryan Reynolds, if you're listening, you can be our
He
sponsor.
shot. He shot the Ryan Reynolds who took Green Lantern. Remember that?
He
Daredevil.
did. That's good.
Deadpool.
Deadpool. It's so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he's got a booze. He could. It's gin, actually, isn't it? Aviation gin, I think.
Yeah, aviation gin. So we'll
bring it
probably
on.
have to ask for his sponsorship at some time.
Yeah.
Because we said his name.
Yeah,
and mentioned his worst movie.
We'll do what we can to hook him up, if he'll hook up us. So Richard dies. Henry takes over, and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, well, it was already starting, I would think. I mean, the peasants hadn't revolted too much. It's like, oh yeah, Richard was a good king, except for that whole thing with the peasants, and by the way, that whole thing with Nicopolis, and by the way, nothing in France, and but he has the Wilton diptych, and
he's got Chaucer. He's got Chaucer.
And Chaucer.
You can't throw a peasant's revolt at him. He was a kid. That's not on him.
Happened on his watch.
That's not on him.
On his watch.
He puts out that fire really well. I'll be your leader, and leads them out of town. This is awesome. Well played, kid. Well played.
Yeah. Go away. Here's some money. Go away.
Well played. And also, one of my boys assassinated your leader. That's just like well done. Yeah. So Shrewsbury. Yeah. Richard deposed. Henry gets in charge, and all hell breaks loose. Things weren't great before that. There's a reason that Henry is coming in. Richard's in very weak shape. And not popular.
Oh yeah, Richard's in weak shape. I mean, England's not been doing a lot of good since the Edward III is ailing in the 1370s. The Black Prince by then is long gone. Giving it to a young boy, giving them the throne to a young boy with in fact some really tough uncles. I mean, John of Gaunt is a tough cookie.
Yeah.
And then his son Henry, John of Gaunt I think, probably looked at Henry and said, you could take the throne.
Yeah, you can take this kid.
Yeah.
And he does, ultimately.
He does. Yeah. And saves all that money and not feeding him.
Yeah, saves some money. So where
enough to pay for Henry Hotspur's body to be quartered,
quartered up.
Okay. Yeah. So why then? You say everything goes to crap after Richard. I mean, Henry doesn't have control of the kingdom. Why would he depose a king if he doesn't have control of the kingdom?
Well, what constitutes control is variable across the Middle Ages. I'll say that for sure.
True.
The biggest problem he's got is that as he's trying, at least the way I view it, as he's trying to establish control in London and then sort of trying to spread that outwards, he's facing lingering problems that were kind of smoldering and now ignite further away in Scotland and in Wales. And these are either one, bad. Yeah. Having both, really bad. And
in Northumbria. I mean, the Percys are the richest guys in all of England.
But the Percys are supporting him initially.
Yeah, initially. Well, support from the Percys, I would, if I was king at any time in the 14th, 15th century and a Percy showed up and I'm going to support you, I think I'm going to go to the Nevilles and see what they offer.
You got to be careful. Yeah, they'll get you.
Yeah, Percys are not to be trusted.
Percys are they're extremely powerful. They're controlling that border against Scotland and doing so at great pains and great peril. And they feel like they're not getting enough credit for that, which is probably true. I don't know.
I mean, they're stealing everybody blind up there. Why do they need credit too?
I wasn't there, but all right. So they got a bone to pick with Richard, and they think Henry can fix those. But Henry's got his kind of own problems in establishing control. And in that process, he needs money, and so he's not giving them what they want. And so you got that bickering going on. And meanwhile, in Wales, Owen Glyndŵr, that happens. Yeah, and Owen Glyndŵr is I got to tell everybody, a huge favorite of mine. Big fan. I'm a big fan. Yeah. I did the Owen Glyndŵr case book, and I love Owen Glyndŵr. I love the revolt. It's all great. It's all awesome
until it isn't.
Well, yeah, But I mean, look, this
It
is
does kind of really just fall apart all of a sudden.
sure, but
He's
you know,
it's like a guy riding a huge wave and it just leaves. It just goes and he flattens down in the ocean.
but he never gets caught. Like that's legit.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no,
look,
he never
Owen
does get
Glendower
caught.
is like, kind of like Braveheart. What they kind of were trying to make that guy to be.
Yeah, I suppose so.
William Wallace is actually just a punk, but what they sort of were imagining that to be, Owen Glendower like kind of really is that, and doesn't get
Yeah.
caught and doesn't get quartered, and that's good stuff. Go him.
Kind of interesting that he also though peters out because nobody really cares. Henry V just doesn't care when he becomes king. So Owen Glendower is really important, and then Henry V says, "You're Welsh. I got French things to do."
He's able to ignore it to some degree.
Yeah.
The Welsh never were able to take and hold that many castles. Is the biggest problem they have in that revolt.
Yeah.
They're able to
I
have a
agree with
lot of really great victories on the ground, but they can't hold the terrain very well. And so once Harlech falls, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, Owen Glendower's risen up, and now you got to deal with that. In fact, Prince Hal, before he gets skewered at Shrewsbury, he's actually the man in charge for a while in trying to attack Owen Glendower. The first person put in charge of trying to put Owen Glendower down is Hotspur. He's first put in charge and actually has some success. And then Owen Glendower, as he's continuing to kind of predate an attack, he then the king actually sends the Prince of Wales, go
to Wales,
go screw up some of his stuff, like go get out there. This is especially after you've had the Battle of Hythen, which is sort of famously the battle that I've given talks about that may not have ever happened. Like it's this amazing battle. I can tell you all about how it happened. I just can't tell you if it really happened.
It really happened. If it happened, I know where.
Yes, yes. If it happened, I know where. If it happened, I know how to reconstruct it. If it happened, I don't know if it happened.
Yeah, we'll do that in our series of imaginary battles. It minus Tirith,
maybe. But the Battle of Brynglas had happened, and that's no question. That happened. Battle of Brynglas, sometimes called the Battle of Pillith, because it happens near Pillith, England. Today, what's called now Pillith, England today. That had happened in 1402 in June. And in that battle, Owen Glendower and the Welsh absolutely wreck the English army that's sent to defeat them. Absolutely wreck it. And we can end up doing an episode or something talking about the Battle of Brynglas.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. But one of the outcomes of that is absolute horror that reaches through England. That Owen Glendower, these Welsh have just destroyed this, what was supposed to be a great army, have just completely destroyed them, taken prisoner, pretty key figure. And in that, is in Mortimer gets captured. And he's actually arguably in line for the throne above the current king now. There's a whole thing there. But he has ties to the Percys. And when the king refuses to ransom him, probably because he's partially in line as a rival claimant, and also it costs money.
He's lost too. Come on, he's lost.
So he doesn't, and that ticks the Percys off. Meanwhile, the Percys have beaten the Scots at the Battle of Hambledon Hill.
Yeah. Another one we'll get to eventually. I mean, that's a fascinating one, if nothing, just because there's odd poems written about it.
Yeah. And these are within months of each other. Hambledon Hill is, I think, in September. Brynglas is in June. So you kind of have this like 1-2 punch where the Percys are angry that Henry won't ransom Mortimer. And then they win this great victory, and including the gathering some prisoners of the Scots. And now Henry wants to take those prisoners and collect the ransom on them, which they're like, you didn't do it, pal. We did it. We should get the ransom. Henry wants the ransom because he's king. He thinks he's special.
Hmm.
That's not a good recipe. That's going to just anger the Percys all the more, and it does, and it does. Do you like the Percys and all this?
It's kind of odd. It's like, do you like the Percys? I've done so much work. We go to the conference at Leeds, and I've been up there in Northumberland and North. It's interesting just looking at Percy's. Their fortified hunting lodges are bigger than most of the castles are. There's no question they had so much money, and but they were so far from power. Normally, we're getting to see the Percys and the Nevilles, so the other family in the north that are huge, that are extremely powerful, extremely wealthy. And they're going to be playing big roles in the Wars of the Roses still. This is really the first time the Percys have come on the scene. But you got to think that Henry. I look at what Henry's thinking at this period of time, because I always doubt royalty. you know,
What
um,
are you, an
I,
American?
I like rich nobles in the countryside, but royalty, no. Um, but hey, Henry's lost all credibility. So 1399, he's taken the throne. And now we're sitting there like 1402, 1403. And what credibility does this guy have? He's been beaten by the Welsh. Nobody gets beaten by the Welsh. Nobody gets, they couldn't mark their calendars far enough back when they saw a defeat by the Welsh before. And then he gets beat by these guys. He gets beat by, or essentially put to shame by the fact that the Percys are the ones that go up against the Scots and defeat them too. Really a huge battle in perception. And so here's Henry looking for legitimacy because he says he's legitimate king. He's overthrown the other. Richard isn't coming out of his grave at this point. He's dead. But there's other claimants to the throne. Certainly, I mean, Edward the third produced tons of sons, and they produced tons of sons. So there's going to be, this in my estimation is really where the Wars of the Roses almost find its beginning. It just stays behind the French scene for a while. But no, I'm not. I don't know what to think about the Percys, but they are very. So they appear at Neville's Cross, 1346. They're extremely important there, and now 1403, they're extremely important. But on the other side, and with this odd duck, Owen Glendour, if not him personally, we've agreed that he's not at the battle, but there are Welsh there, and even if he's not, he's still a thorn in the king's
Yeah.
side. The king's credibility in 1403 is nothing. I mean, if I'm the royal newspaper writer, whatever the journalist in charge of the royal court, and I'm reporting back, I'm thinking, and we'll see if Henry lasts the year as king, if he's overthrown by somebody else who puts him in another castle to start.
Yeah, and Henry's reactions to all this aren't necessarily the best. I mean, so in October, he starts seizing Mortimer's estates. Mortimer's been taken prisoner by the Welsh, like trying to defend against Owen Glendour, gets his butt kicked at Bryn Glas. I think that's Owen's tactical brilliance. It's amazing what happens there. But Henry's reaction, let me just start seizing. This guy was really rich. Let me just start seizing his stuff. To which Mortimer then, in November, responds by marrying Owen Glendour's daughter.
Yeah.
And then in December, defects to Owen's side and declares his own rebellion against the English.
Yeah.
And to which Henry then responds by sending his prince out there. He says, just go start burning. Just go start terrorizing. And so Prince Henry is dispatched and heads out and razes Owen's homes in May of 1403, I think it is. And meanwhile, up north, the Percys are calling for help. Come help us. And Henry starts marching north to do that. He's going to man up, get up there. I'm going to show off, blah, 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 blah. And we have this weird vacuum about kind of exactly what goes on. Henry and his son are marching north ostensibly to help the Percys defend against the Scots. When on the 10th of July, Hotspur declares rebellion against the crown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, exactly what's Hotspur thinking? What does
Yeah.
Dad know about it?
Yeah. It is interesting because that's one of the things we forget too is Hotspur's not the head of the family.
No, Daddy is.
He's not even the Henry Percy's in charge. I mean, he's not the. It's like, is this a rebellion of a child towards his father, or is it a rebellion of a child past his father to the king? And it's an I'm trying to write this up, and of course, I'm always thinking about it from the Hundred Years' War perspective. It's a period of time when England's going to respond very well, but at this time, the French have gobbled up pretty much everything that they had lost back in the Edward III days, and they're lucky. They must get these spies that are sending things saying, yeah, just England's going to eat itself alive here. You don't have to worry. There's not going to be anybody. This is going to be not near the 100 Years' War that we thought it might be. So.
Yeah, they ultimately it's after Shrewsbury, but in 1405, a treaty is signed between the Welsh and the French. Owen Glendower signs onto a treaty between the Welsh and the French, and an agreement is made among competing powers to split England up. Yeah. So nobody's. It's looking bad for the English for sure here. Open question. I say open. Look, I think we all assume Henry Percy and Hotspur are doing this in coherence with each other. They know this is the plan. We don't really have the primary documents or something where Henry Percy says, okay, son, on the 10th of July, you declare rebellion and head off this direction. What we have is a lot of circumstantial evidence. Now, Henry Percy will ultimately, this is Daddy, Hotspur's daddy. He'll ultimately say, I didn't know what my son was doing. That's, what? Wow, I don't know.
Plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. He gets away with it. He gets away with it.
Well, he's got so much money. It's like, I've got all the money in the world. So if you want any of this in taxes, and you want my retinues coming down to help you in France and other places that Henry might have thought, he puts Henry in a Henry IV, the king. We got too many Henrys running around here. He puts him in a real bind. I mean, what can you do if you're king? You've got to accept his declaration of ignorance. And, you got to also think there's not going to be a paper trail. The Percys are the godfathers of the North. They're doing this, I mean, old Henry Percy is Marlon Brando in the chair, and Hotspur's Sonny. I mean, does that not work?
It works, though weirdly there ultimately is a paper trail when in 1405,
right,
Owen, Mortimer, and Henry Percy, now the father, all sign on to the tripartite indenture, which is like, okay, after we get rid of Henry, how do we divide England into three pieces and we all get a chunk? We have that. We have the tripartite indenture. It's a legit document. It's not made up. It's real. I've got a whole thing where I've gone through and investigated all that. That's real. It's genuine. And it's actually really telling about who's controlling the power in that regard. And it actually looks to be Owen that's driving that bus, which is pretty wild. He gets his claims first, and then Percy gets his, and then Mortimer, you get the rest.
Mortimer's a loser in this all anyway by this time.
But so Hotspur declares rebellion on the 10th of July, and the king, at least according to our chronicle accounts, at first doesn't even believe this. It's so what I was coming up to help, what he's the rebellion? What? He pauses his march for I think a day or two, and then turns his march because he knows that Hotspur is heading for Cheshire, which was a real key supporter of Richard. Cheshire was a real great seat of power for the previous King Richard. And it's clear Hotspur is going to go use that against Henry, raise the Cheshiremen against Henry, and that in fact is what Hotspur does. And this is the kind of setup to the Battle of Shrewsbury.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and summarize. I mean, we've gone on a bit about this, but this is the one battle, and I think in English history where you have to see all the pieces coming together, because you're absolutely right. I mean, this is I think Henry the Fourth is at the very verge of losing everything that he's very. I mean, his grip has not been tight on England between 1399 and 1403 anyway. But now he's got some viable problems there. It'd be nice to know what drives Hotspur to do what he does then. Whether maybe it's Henry. I've tried to look at it in military terms, see if Henry has perhaps made a pass so the Hotspur thinks he can get down to Cheshire and get those reinforcements. Of course, other historians have said, "Oh, he's linking up with Owen. That's why he's going to Cheshire. He's linking up with Owen." But Owen's not there at the point. I mean, he might have some recruits right out of Wales to join Henry Percy, but Owen himself is. I mean, he's down in the middle of Wales at this point.
He is. Yeah, we know exactly where he is. He's down near St. Clair in southern Wales. He's a long way away. I don't think that there's any plan to hook up. I think this, in so much as we can figure out what the plan must have been, there was this kind of notion of the Percys splitting as Henry drives north, and they're going to be able to kind of sweep around behind him and trap him, cut him off, and have him caught between the two Percys, between the two armies. And that Hotspur, they know that as soon as they start gathering the army, the jig is up. Hotspur makes the run for Cheshire, hoping that that Henry IV will continue pushing north, and he doesn't. He immediately makes this turn and makes a beeline to go take on Hotspur, which means Hotspur is not prepared. It's very clear he gets there faster than Hotspur can get ready for this fight. So Hotspur is actually outnumbered when the Battle of Shrewsbury happens.
It is interesting because I've thought about this quite a bit. I mean, is Hotspur doing this on his own? Is he trying to link up? It's funny because most British historians want to look at Henry as this big powerhouse. Henry is not a powerhouse until he wins. If he loses this battle, everybody's writing about what a wuss he is, and they couldn't hold on to the kingdom and everything else. He does some surprising military moves, but even getting to the battlefield, I don't see that Henry's going to walk away with it. His showing up at the battlefield, surprising Hotspur, certainly gives him some advantages. But Hotspur thinks he can win this on his own. He's not linking up with any Welsh or anything else. He has a huge army in his own right. Plus, he's added this contingent of archers that come out of Cheshire, not involved in the English war at this period of time. So there's a large number that he can call upon, and they come to his service, not Henry's.
Yeah, they come up right away. There's absolutely no question about that. How quickly they run to the standard. He actually has promised them that Richard himself will show up shortly. I can't remember what it is. He's a couple weeks. He's like within 2 weeks or something. Richard himself shall be here, and yay!
Yeah. They can bring a skeleton out of the tomb.
He will not be.
Wave at him.
He will not be because he's dead.
But it doesn't take 4 years to start.
But it does speak to, again, he's trading on that loyalty, and of course they've got their own frustrations with Henry. Everybody in the north does. So he's gathering forces as he raises the standard for revolt, and he thinks he's got more time than he has, and he doesn't. It's a good move that Henry IV makes, as you said, for all the kind of negativity of him. This decision to turn and come at Hotspur as quickly as he does means that this fight kind of happens the way it does. I guess I sort of think that this is lost the moment Henry IV makes that turn. I have a hard time.
It is because we know the end.
Yeah, we know the end. I mean, Chris, turns out this is a very close thing, and it's like closer than it should be in many respects, because outnumbered, Hotspur, he really shouldn't have done as well as he did.
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing he did as well as he did, and he does almost win this fight, which is extraordinary. It shouldn't be that close, and he almost wins it.
Yeah. I think part of it, and this is something we don't think about much either, because this is a pivotal battle, but it's a pivotal battle at a time when England has not been particularly victorious in France. In fact, they pulled back. Largely, there's been peace since 1380, and then the French instead have got a really good king is putting things up, even though he's going to go nuts in a few years. The the fact is the generation that won those victories of Edward III they're gone. There's nobody with Henry who's fought recently. So I think that the strategic move he makes, that's easier than the tactical moves he's going to have to be forced to make, because he doesn't have a leadership corps that's really fought anything. But on the other hand,
Hotspur does.
Percy's have fought in against the Scots.
Yeah.
So they're far more experienced.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. It is the evening factor here. There's two things that Percy has in his favor. One is, as you just said, battle like tested leadership. His guys have been fighting in the north fairly recently, Hamilton Hill, all that stuff. Like they know what they're doing. They have experience for the most part. Nothing equivalent on the other side. Guys have fought, but not like this. This Hotspur has very much, definitely more of a veteran core. Tremendously useful. He also is the one who is able to take position.
Yeah.
And so he's fighting from more of a defensive position, and that's always an advantage. It's much easier to defend than it is to be the one charging. It's not to say that the defender always wins. That's definitely not the case. But it is an advantage to be, they got to run at us. They got to expend that energy. We just have to hold. That's useful. It means that they actually get high ground. Henry Percy takes high ground.
Yeah. And very important high ground. I mean, so you and I have walked the battlefield with our wonderful Hobbit friend, Bob Oozum Savage. And I'd been there before, walked it with Tony Pollard, who dug the battlefield for both academically and then for Two Men in a Trench. And so it was kind of different perspectives, different ideas. We get to some of the things the archaeologists found or didn't find. That was even more important, I think, in Shrewsbury. But when you get on that ground, and this is, I learned this from John France, our great friend and great medieval military historian. Go to the place.
Hi, John.
Because they speak to you after a while. And there's Shrewsbury. The high ground is not just important. It is the high ground. What is below that is wet around that area. So there is, Hotspur's really selected his battlefield with an experience that suggests, okay, if Henry fights me here, he's got a disadvantage, not just because I'm on the high ground, but because there's only a certain number of approaches to it. He cannot bring his cavalry through the bog. Nobody can. And so it's a little more important. The Percy gets there beforehand and sets his troops up. So it's just not the defense winning. This is a good selection of battle.
Yeah, it's a great sight, and this is probably where shocking all of our listeners. I am not going to say the battle's in the wrong spot. I'm not going to do that. We don't know exactly where it was.
Right. Well, it may be turned. I think it's turned a little bit.
We got questions about rotation here, but we know pretty much where it is, and there's a couple reasons for this. This is one of these rare battles where we have this. We've got a building. We've got Battlefield Church,
a memorial church.
St. Mary Magdalene Church. It's there today. You can go check it out. It's very cool. There's a church there that was built purposefully for the souls of those who died there.
Yeah.
One of 4 that I can think of occasions of this. There's the Towton Chapel, Wakefield, and Hastings. Hastings is
Yeah,
really the
there are
big one.
lots of different things. Well, Wakefield's is up
Yeah.
already. They just rededicate
Yeah, I guess that's
the bridge
true.
chapel.
Which is why it's not,
The,
that one's
and
not near the field.
no, and Towton. Well, in fact, no, it isn't. But it's where they executed the young York after Daddy had died on the battlefield. They killed him. They executed him right at the chapel. But we know at Towton there was a memorial chapel put up. This was pretty regular with the English. I love the fact that the French often will say, "Oh, we're not going to put up chapels for penance." Phil II, after the Battle of Bouvines, he says, "Oh, I'll put up 2 statues of me,"
Yeah.
and
And that's
that'll
it.
be the memorial to the
That's not
that.
what we get after this battle. It
That's
is,
not what we get after
yeah.
this. But there aren't any bodies.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that Tony Pollard found
Yeah,
or didn't
Tony
find.
Pollard, he dug all around there, thinking that this was the site of, because it's for the souls. He figured the souls and the
Well,
bodies.
and there'd been stories that there was a mass grave there, and that it
Yeah,
actually somebody
yeah,
digging a drainage ditch, I think it was, that they'd accidentally uncovered a pit. And so, yeah, it was a logical place digging. Yeah, nothing there.
yeah.
At least on that
No,
side of the church. I think most of the digging was on one side of the church.
and
Nothing there.
nothing where the guy found the pit either. So
Yeah.
we're a little bit suspicious about that now. But it is true. I think that that's perfectly fine. I mean, one of the things Mike and I are historians, deal with words more than we go out in the field and dig things. We leave others to do that. But you talk to the good archaeology, or conflict archaeologists from the Middle Ages, Tony Pollard, and Tim Sutherland, and then it falls into place that the monks show up and drag all the bodies off. They're not going to wait for a memorial chapel to be built. The monks, there's a huge monastic population in Shrewsbury, and one of their responsibilities is to get all these guys out there on the field are Christian, so they got to be buried in hallowed ground. And what's bigger than hallowed ground down by Shrewsbury Abbey? I'm almost positive that's where the bodies went.
Yeah, that's where I think they probably are too. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a memorial chapel, not for the bodies, but for the souls, and for a kind of recompense of, I killed a lot of fellow Englishmen. I kind of feel bad about that. And the plot of land is, we have the charting of the church. It says, like, on the site, the references that we have. I've collected a lot of sources on Shrewsbury. A lot of sources on Shrewsbury because I've been putting together a book on Shrewsbury. We get a lot of different names for where it is. The early ones are all field names.
Mm-hmm.
And those field names, there's some triangulation to this, but are all within a square mile. I mean, it's tighter than that even. I mean, it's right there where the map says the battlefield is. That's basically where all this stuff is. It's all figuring there. And as Kelly said, it's where Hotspur would probably want to be. If he's taking position, we know he's taking position north of Shrewsbury, because we know where he is staying the night before. And when he realizes that King Henry has not only come to Shrewsbury, but has crossed the river, it's not like he can go in and take the city. That's not an option. He needs to start a tactical retreat, and is now in danger of being completely surrounded, and his army being picked off bit by bit. And remember, this is a hastily gathered army. So if he thinks, well, I'll just kind of as a whole army do this kind of big maneuvers and stuff, you don't know if parts of this are going to start shaving off, right? Groups not too dedicated. Now they see the king's flag. Hey, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about this. This all sounded good. Maybe I'm going to go home. So he needs to take position quickly, and as efficiently and as best he can. And this is the spot. This is high ground, close to the road. He takes his line on a ridge and says, come at me, bro.
Well, in fact, don't we have the 2 Roman roads coming into Shrewsbury right around the battlefield?
Yeah, he's more or less between them.
Yeah. And Mike and I mean, if you haven't heard us before, this is a mantra. Battles are not fought in fields that you have to travel across other fields to get to. There's not a point.
Follow the
Why
roads.
go up and down? Yeah, or serpentine sort of weird charges that everybody wants to make them be. And the fact is that these are the Roman roads coming into Shrewsbury that Henry Percy puts his army right in between. He's got an access now to get away up the one towards the north, and it seems that Henry the King is coming on the one that's coming across below the battlefield. At least that's what I put together on that.
Yeah, is Hotspur's retreat would be to Chester.
Yeah.
This would be, if things go south, he's going to make a beeline for it. Now, as the battle starts getting set up, Hotspur's on the high ground. He's got the bridge, and King Henry facing him. A kid's got to earn his spurs. You know what I mean? It's one thing, kid, to go burn some houses down in Wales. Like, well done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well done.
Yeah.
We have, by the way, Prince Hal's letter, this kid's letter, writing home to dad, saying, "Yeah, I burned Owen Glendower's house. I went and found it, and I burned it, and indeed he did. We got that in the archaeology. He did. He went and burned it. Good job, kid. This is going to be something different. You're going to be in charge of the left wing of the army." So we have.
In fact, I'm sure Dad said, "Go get an arrow in your face."
Go get him, champ. Go get him. It's going to be good times. So yeah, he divides his army. The king does, in 3 parts. He has the center, and on the left, he puts his son, young fella, Prince Hal, and what could go wrong, right? I mean, it's a battle.
Who commands the 3rd part? You remember?
The 3rd part. Oh, I should remember this. I got to look it up here.
Yeah.
Stafford, Earl of Stafford.
That's right. Stafford does.
Oh man, why am I blank? I blanked out on that.
Still, I mean,
he's on the right.
If you put them all together, I mean, Henry IV has gone to northwestern Europe or northeastern Europe, fought a little bit there, but the experience that the 3 leaders have is pretty negligible in comparison. But one of the things that I'm very curious about, because we do have the English archers.
Yeah.
Now, English archers on one side is obviously supposed to win, right?
Yeah.
Henry Percy's got the English archers, so the knights are no more. They're going to get mowed down by these phenomenal longbowmen. That doesn't happen. Is this a problem with Hotspur not knowing how to deal with the large groups of archers? I mean, Henry V will, but it won't be until 1415. Is it a situation where, or is it a situation where they maybe the archers just aren't? We know they're there because Henry V receives an arrow in his face, but do we? I mean,
that was the only archer there.
Are they diminished in size? Or are they not that important anymore? What's happening?
Well, we have archer versus archer here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the big issues and it's really the first time on this kind of scale that you have longbow versus longbow. This isn't longbow versus knights. It's longbow versus longbow. Yeah, I mean, there's knights, there's men at arms. I'm not going to say they're not there, but yeah, it's not something that one side's got and the other one doesn't, which had to be like kind of interesting on the field. Mm-hmm. Right? These guys are kind of thinking, oh well, we shoot these things, and they just kind of wait. They're coming back. They're shooting back.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What's going?
Yeah.
Oh
no, we're gonna get them again in the Wars of the Roses, longbowmen against longbowmen.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the first, but hardly the last.
It is, and longbows are important. It's just very interesting when we look at this battle that this is the first one where we see longbows on each side, but consequently, there's one side that's going to lose. So we can't give credit to the longbow without actually also blaming the longbowman. And then we go back to the men at arms.
Right. I mean, we will say that the opening barrage appears to go Percy's way. That they have higher ground, and that obviously is going to give them better range, right? They just gravity. You know how that stuff works.
Yeah.
And he's got the Cheshire bowmen. I mean, they really are. They're the real deal. And it looks like he gets the best hand on this. Our sources say that the king's men are going down. I believe the expression is like leaves in autumn. uh, which is such a beautiful image. And then you're like, wait, we're talking about a bunch of people dying. That's not good.
No, it's not good.
And it's this is a battle that actually happens. It looks fairly quick.
Yeah,
It's
that's the other point.
yeah.
Is it doesn't linger long. I mean, everybody will look at us and look at the time and say, "Wait a second, they're almost an hour into this, and we haven't actually gotten to any fighting."
The fighting's
Well,
quick.
we did give you Henry V's face in the first few minutes.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. But the fact is this battle probably is faster than any we've talked about. It seems to have 2-3 phases, maybe over an hour. If it goes 2, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, really, you get this barrage, and it's a little unclear if it's a result of this barrage or if there is some melee that happens, and then the Earl of Stafford starts falling back. The right side of the King's line collapses.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Earl of Stafford's in charge of that side of the line. It's that side of the line that collapses back. And as we can tell, all these events kind of happen simultaneously. Yeah. Not simultaneously, but like in quick sequence to each other. The right side of the King's line is collapsing. Young Henry, Prince Hal, future Henry V. We got too many bloody Henrys here.
Yeah, there are, and they're bloody Henrys.
And they're bloody at this point because Prince Hal probably, if he's in the middle of melee, it's one of the things that makes me think that maybe there is some melee going on, and he's hot.
Yeah.
That he lifts his head and probably lifts his visor to get air, and that's
or to give a command,
or maybe to give a command.
There's communication is depth.
Yeah,
we're talking here,
and then gets skewered. That's when it gets skewered.
Yeah, we're talking here about a helmet. So this is the great helmet. We're past that. We got a bassinet with a visor on it, and when it's down, it's really protective. Yeah. There's hardly anything that anywhere an arrow could get through. But the real two problems are the air inside a helmet like that becomes immediately heavy. And then the second thing is, if you're a commander, and Henry has to give commands because his side doesn't fail.
Yeah,
it's interesting that the old guy's side, that's the weakened one. That's the one that's starting to falter. Henry in the middle, he's probably not had a full-on charge yet, but his once that weakens, they're gonna everything. 2/3 of Hotspur's lines coming on Henry IV. Prince Hal, this young boy who everybody thinks is a little too wild for everything, he's on the side. Probably has to raise his visor, and we don't know exactly why, whether it is to get more air. And I kind of go with those that say, at this point he needs to make commands, and we've got to talk about communication on the battlefield. Lots of mental sounds, lots of everything. He raises his visor so he can shout, and it's not muffled. And kabing!
Yeah, because Kelly's saying here is, if you've got all this metal helmet on, and you're shouting in there, nobody's gonna understand what you're saying. So lift this thing, shout your commands, throw it back down. But yeah, whatever it is makes him lift this thing. I like the gasping for air because I like the idea of him looking upward just for a moment, seeing blue sky and seeing the arrow.
Arrows do travel a little faster to see it.
But I like my image, Kelly. Not gonna
let you like it. Well, okay, he's seeing it once it's stuck in there. Let's put it that way. And then, I shot an arrow in the air. Where it fell, I knew. Oh shit!
I do. Whoops! The king's head. And whack!
Or to the prince's face. But the thing why I'm thinking more about the command is he does command. He takes the leadership at that time. He doesn't wait to see what happens on his father's side.
Supposedly.
He sees supposedly. But I mean, it is over. Like you said, all this stuff is simultaneous. And Henry does. I mean, I think Henry, especially with his subsequent battles and other things, he shows a tactical acumen that we don't see in a lot of leaders, let's face it, and in medieval leaders, because he reacts. And he reacted fast enough at that point to realize that if that side has failed, his father's now going to have 2 units of soldiers on him twice as many this Henry probably has in the middle, King Henry has in the middle, and Hal's got to do something, and he does. It works. I mean, arrow in the, maybe the arrow knocks some sense into the kid. I don't know.
Yeah,
but he according to all the sources, it's at that point he gets his line, and they move around and hit Hotspur.
They make a turn and charge. Yeah. So as the right side of the royal line, we'll say, the right side is in retreat. Now bringing pressure down. Hotspur seeing this. This is what you're waiting for, right?
Yeah.
Is for part of the opposite line to start retreating and then go get them, right? And you want to just push them now into rout, right? You'll come charging down. That sends more panic through the lines. The line will collapse, and you're going to slaughter everybody in the back. Good times.
Yeah.
Hotspur.
And it's also understood. I think Hotspur realizes if he can get to the king, if he can kill the king, it's over.
It's over. He's got his chance. The right side's collapsed. Earl Stafford's in retreat. And you can imagine the center is now starting to waver, right? They're like,
and that's where the king is.
And that's where the king is. He's starting to waver. Hotspur orders the charge. Go get him. And so now here comes Hotspur's lines charging down. And as I said, it's apparently, supposedly, might be Lancastrian propaganda, but supposedly in this moment, with an arrow 6 inches deep in his skull, that this young man sees this, recognizes this, and instead of like, you should get off the field. No, just a small scratch. Instead orders a dead charge, a turn and a charge of his own, straight into the flank of all those charging men, and wipes Hotspur right off the field.
I mean, it's a brilliant tactic, and that's one of the reasons I think it happened this way, because it's a brilliant tactic. It's a tactic that had to do spur of the moment. It's not something that could have been planned. Nobody plans your right side, the strongest side, to fail, and then oh, by the way, Henry, why don't you, a 16-year-old boy, lead your troops into a flanking charge? Hotspur doesn't expect it, that's for sure, and it is over almost that amount of knights hitting into, because there are men at arms at this point. It's men at arms against men at arms. Those number of knights on horseback coming into the side of a completely surprised charge that is aiming at a different part in the battle. You can see it cinematically. I mean, it just is. It's amazing. And then led by a kid who's got this arrow. Must have been sticking out of his. I mean, I couldn't imagine if he'd broken it, he would have gone down. He would have probably passed out.
No, it's either still sticking out, or he had instinctively, after having been hit, had instinctively grabbed and pulled, because that can happen, right? And the arrowhead was still there, and they kind of probably didn't even realize that for the first minutes.
That may have
but
been.
He just and pulled that thing out. The losses are actually heavier on the royal side. This is one of these curious battles where it's hardly alone, but where the numbers went to the loser, if you will. Like, Hotspur lost fewer men, but he also lost his life, and that was the end of that.
And so, I mean, it's the exact same thing that if Hotspur gets Henry, if Hotspur kills Henry, the battle's over. Hotspur's now king. If Hotspur gets killed, the revolt is over. And it seems that that's the case, whether it's Henry's charge or whether Hotspur gets killed, but whether it's Prince Hal's charge or whether Hotspur gets killed by the center of the English, we don't know. But at that point, everybody turns and leaves on his side, and they've got the road up to Chester. They're all on their way. I think it is a situation where that charge, because the result is the death of Hotspur, dead on decisive in the battle.
I mean, and extraordinary if in fact he had this arrow in his head, which I like. I mean, that's totally.
And there is some really goofy. We got to say this in the visitor center on the battlefield. There is this goofy mannequin head with some really bad hair. And this arrow sticking out.
It might be better now, but when we went there a few years ago, it was rough.
I think we laughed. I think you and Bob and I looked at that. I mean, I've got pictures of it because, of course, when you come across that sort of stuff, you go, yeah, you might have put a bit more than 15 cents of your local Woolworth for this.
It again, I think we talked about this last time, but we have in the medieval reader the account then that is the surgeon's account, John Bradmore's account of how he got that arrow out, that arrowhead, I should say, out of Prince Hal's head after this battle, because they couldn't leave it there. It was, again, I'm figuring it's lodged against the base of his skull next to his spine. John Bradmore is extremely worried about seizures, and is giving all kinds of ointments and stuff and hot compresses to try and prevent seizures while he's figuring out how to get this thing out, and realizes pretty quickly he can't push it through. He's got to get it out the way it came, and it's probably a bodkin head.
Yeah. Well, we can't be sure on that one. I would think it's more likely, because this would be the chief arrowhead used in the early 15th century. It's one of those triangular ones that's diamond-shaped triangular, which is even going to be harder to embed, but it's easier to pull out.
It is easier to pull out. Yeah. He talks about how Bradmore does, how he did this. So not spoiler warning, trigger warning. If you're eating, you may want to put that food down momentarily. Yeah. The first thing he has to do, because by the time he gets to the kid,
who's gone to Kenilworth,
they took him trundling down the road to Kenilworth Castle.
Oh, yeah. At a certain moment in time, you wonder what the pain must have been like. He's got a arrowhead in his head, and they say, let's just go a few days down the road to Kenilworth.
I can't even imagine how bad that would be. But there had been, days and days and days it had been. So the tissue, if you can imagine, in this wound had all swollen up. And so his first problem is he's got to reopen the wound. And so he very carefully does this with, he calls them tents that he makes. But what it is like very thin pieces of wood, that he's covering with this special ointment and special fibers and stuff. And he's like,
and honey,
and honey, and putting it in like a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, putting these wood, almost like think about it as like a wood dowel into and he's just getting it bigger and bigger and bigger until now it's nice and big. And then he goes and makes this, has a blacksmith make, I'm sure he doesn't do it himself, this instrument. He has it made, which is like a tongs that goes in, but is the way it scissors it pushes the tip of it. When you open one side, it pushes the tip out. It really functions like a scissor, only it's not sharp. It's got these little grooves on it, so that when you put this into the arrowhead socket and then kind of open it on the other end that you're holding, it pushes outward and grips that from the inside. And then he says, I just can't believe we have this document. It's just nuts.
Yeah. And his drawing of the tool too.
Oh yeah, he gives a drawing of this thing. Then, wiggling it to and fro, little by little, with the aid of God, I extracted the arrowhead. The divers gentlemen and the servants of the prince standing by all gave thanks to God. There's a whole crew of people here, because germs are not a thing. And then, with a syringe filled with white wine, I cleansed the wound and put in new tents of flax fibers saturated in a cleanser, and then describes this concoction that he makes from white breadcrumbs boiled in clean water, strained through a cloth, with barley flour and honey that has been boiled, and then had turpentine added to it and a cleansing ointment. He gives like all these recipes for this stuff. It's amazing. And packs the wound with this day after day after day after day as the wound slowly heals up, so that, once again, thanks be to God, he was perfectly cured by the end. It's amazing.
It's a month. Oh, too, isn't it? Doesn't he say it takes a month for this all to work?
He says every 2 days he has to do this. It takes 20 days after having removed the arrowhead that he's putting this ointment stuff on.
Yeah. Amazing. I think there's a lot of that white wine that's going in Henry's mouth because there's no other
Oh my
anesthetic at this
goodness.
point, and it cannot have been
My goodness.
painless. This has got to be. I mean, you're removing
16
a piece of
years old.
metal.
I
Yeah,
oh my God.
yeah.
The
And of course, as you point out, if it doesn't get lodged in the back of his skull, it probably goes through, and they just push it through, and
yeah,
he can get it out. And it would have taken no time at all. He may have even been able to do that in the battlefield, but uh, not probably well directed a charge into the flank of Hotspur.
yeah.
Still amazing. Of course, Shakespeare gives us this idea, and he gets it from other contemporary sources that Henry V's a little happy-go-lucky, um, and then he's not. So
Yeah.
do you think this kind of, I mean, either the pain, the trauma of the whole thing, or the fact that it may have nicked his brain, that we've got some personality change going on?
Yeah, there's been this notion that's been shopped around that this bruises part of his brain. I don't know. I to me to me it's the trauma of
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it
That is
is.
what changes him more
Yeah,
than anything.
yeah,
And I'm actually writing a book right now on the Battle of Agincourt, obviously, featuring him. And I started off with this. I start off with Shrewsbury because nothing could possibly be more definitive in your life than having experienced something like at the age of 16 to go through the trauma of this. And if the stories are right of what he did and not just Lancastrian propaganda, also the kind of glory of what he did, right? Of,
yeah,
of, of this
yeah,
charge. He saved the king in one act, in one moment. It was up to him and he saved the kingdom. He saved his father's life. Like history was pivotal in that moment and he did it. And he did it
yeah,
with this wound. And then he survived this, a wound that should have killed him. And he
yeah.
survived it.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
It is kind of interesting. I don't think it's Lancastrian propaganda. I think that what Henry will show then in the campaign, 1415, and then the campaigns of 1417 until he dies, just show that he has become a battle hardy leader, but he's also become a risk taker.
yeah.
And because we're going to do Agincourt in another few months, but the this whole movement across. I mean, there's no way in the world that Henry should have won the Battle of Agincourt, I think. And we got to get him there. We got to get him to make that crazy move across Normandy from Harfleur, where, I mean, again, who knows that he should have taken that castle. But then that crazy move with the very few troops across the north of Normandy until it gets to Agincourt. I think that is anchored in the trauma of Shrewsbury on the young kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm with you. I don't know that the pain itself, but there's clear. I mean, PTSD is different in a lot of different ways, and this really changes Henry. This whole battle changes Prince Hal. So it's not just Henry IV that secures his kingship, but Henry V secures his kingship here too.
Yeah, in many respects, he's from this point forward, he's walking to Agincourt. He doesn't know it yet,
Yeah, yeah,
but he's on that path. And as I said, this is he probably shouldn't have won at Agincourt. That's probably gonna upset some people.
no.
Whatever, we'll get to it. But we'll talk about it in the coming months. Hopefully, I'll have my book done by then, so I'll be able
Well, we
to
can do
say some
that.
smart stuff. But
Yeah,
it
give Mike Woodcock too. He'll finish it.
it Shrewsbury, not as well known as these other battles, but yet plays this really pretty important role in what it potentially sort of causes in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And
I think
certainly,
you're
if
right.
this battle goes the other way, like the whole
Yeah.
history of the crown is pretty different. And it came close. It really did come close. But good job, Prince Hal, getting it over
Good
with.
job, Prince Hal. And the lights are not flickering.
Yeah.
They took that good job, Prince Hal, and
So
these are
that's
clearly Welshmen holding this restaurant. This bar. They don't like that statement, or Frenchmen or something like that. We probably should have come to a wine bar for this. Have gin in a wine bar.
we gotta yeah.
Great, good diagnosis on Shrewsbury. Mike and I have been asked. Mike was asked. I think I'm going to tag along to write a case book on Battle of Shrewsbury, and so we're hoping to put more of these thoughts down and get it out in a casebook sometime in the near future.
We'll try and get it done. Well, look, thanks as always for joining us, everybody. They're locking the doors on us. So hopefully you can join us next time when we are going to be talking about the Battle of Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
We're going back going back to Hastings.
Go Vikings.
If you haven't watched Viking Valhalla, you don't have to. We'll absolve you from that. But I'm sure.
Oh, come on. Bad Viking films. They make us every year. They're putting out more and more.
I'm sure something of it will come up. As ever, a reminder, this podcast is sponsored by medievalist.net. So the best way to support us, other than buying our individual books, is to join their Patreon at patreon.com/medievalist. And that is also the best place if you've got a question, a comment, something for our Q&As, drop it on the Patreon. It'll get to us. Ryan Reynolds, if you're wanting to sponsor us, hit us up there.
Any booze company, we're ready.
Penderin, if you liked what I said, send me some gin. Otherwise, in the spirit of things, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.